Hey, friends, welcome back to the Bible in Order. I am your host, Pastor Joe Day, and this time we are jumping into the book of Job. We are going to be covering the first five chapters of the book. This is a kind of a weird one. We could say that about a lot of scripture, but this book is one that has been debated back and forth over the years. Is this an actual thing that happened? Or is this essentially a story that's presented in a way that's supposed to say this is an object lesson about God and about Jesus and all of that? We'll get into all of that along the way. But like we talked about last time, the thing to understand about why this is being placed in like smack dab in the middle of Genesis is that this isn't really given framework. This isn't really given a setting and a time and a place in the purest sense, because this seems like, well, because it would seem like this is designed to not be bogged down by historical person, place, thing, and designed to have the reader focus on learning more about God and asking big questions about how God runs the world, essentially. And that's going to be a big point of focus throughout this entire book. A lot of times when we hear about Job, this is within the context of suffering. Job gets quoted whenever we talk about human suffering and things like that. But I think there's some deeper stuff when we look at what we learn about God in the midst of all of this. And so for now, we're going to go ahead and jump into Job chapter 1. And again, we are reading out of the NLT. But just so you are aware of where this is being set, this is set in Uz, which is a great distance away from ancient Israel. All characters are non-Israelites, and there is no clear historical setting. Like we said, all of that's important. Okay, so Job chapter 1, and again, we are reading out of the NLT. There once was a man named Job who lived in the land of Uz. He was blameless, a man of complete integrity. He feared God and stayed away from evil. He had 7 sons and 3 daughters. He owned 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 teams of oxen, and 500 female donkeys. He also had many servants. He was, in fact, the richest person in that entire area. Job's sons would take turns preparing feasts in their homes, and they would also invite their 3 sisters to celebrate with them. When these celebrations ended, sometimes after several days, Job would purify his children. He would get up early in the morning and offer a burnt offering for each of them. For Job said to himself, "Perhaps my children have sinned and have cursed God in their hearts." This was Job's regular practice. One day, the members of the heavenly court came to present themselves before the Lord, and the accuser, Satan, came with them. "Where have you come from?" the Lord asked Satan. Satan answered the Lord, "I have been patrolling the earth, watching everything that's going on." Then the Lord asked Satan, "Have you noticed my servant Job? He is the finest man in all the earth. He is blameless, a man of complete integrity. He fears God and stays away from evil." Satan replied to the Lord, "Yes, but Job has good reason to fear God. You have always put a wall of protection around him and his home and his property. You have made him prosper in everything he does. Look how rich he is. But reach out and take away everything he has, and he will surely curse you to your face. All right, you may test him, the Lord said to Satan. Do whatever you want with everything he possesses, but don't harm him physically. So Satan left the Lord's presence. One day, when Job's sons and daughters were feasting at the oldest brother's house, a messenger arrived at Job's home with this news: Your oxen were plowing, with the donkeys feeding beside them, when the Sabeans raided us. They stole all the animals and killed all the farmlands. I am the only one who escaped to tell you. While he was still speaking, another messenger arrived with the news: The fire of God has fallen from heaven and burned up all your sheep and all your shepherds. I am the only one who escaped to tell you. While he was still speaking, a third messenger arrived with the news: Three bands of Chaldean raiders have stolen your camels and killed your servants. I am the only one who escaped to tell you. While he was still speaking, another messenger arrived with this news: Your sons and daughters were feasting at your oldest brother's home. Suddenly, a powerful wind swept from the wilderness and hit the house on all sides. The house collapsed, and all your children are dead. I am the only one who escaped to tell you. Job stood up and tore his robe in grief. Then he shaved his head and fell to the ground to worship. He said, I came naked from my mother's womb, and I will be naked when I leave. The Lord gave what I had, and the Lord has taken it away. Praise the name of the Lord. In all of this, Job did not sin by blaming God. Chapter 2. One day, the members of the heavenly court came again to present themselves before the Lord, and the accuser Satan came with them. Where have you come from? The Lord asked Satan. Satan answered the Lord, I have been patrolling the earth, watching everything that's going on. Then the Lord asked Satan, Have you noticed my servant Job? He is the finest man in all the earth. He is blameless, a man of complete integrity. He fears God and stays away from evil. He has maintained his integrity, even though you urged me to harm him without cause. Satan replied to the Lord, Skin for skin. A man will give up everything he has to save his life, but reach out and take away his health. He will surely curse you to your face. All right, do with him as you please, the Lord said to Satan, but spare his life. So Satan left the Lord's presence, and he struck Job with terrible boils from head to foot. Job scraped his skin with a piece of broken pottery as he sat among the ashes. His wife said to him, Are you still trying to maintain your integrity? Curse God and die. But Job replied, You talk like a foolish woman. Should we accept only good things from the hand of God and never anything bad? So, in all this, Job said nothing wrong. When three of Job's friends heard of the tragedy he had suffered, they got together and traveled from their homes to comfort and console him. Their names were Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite. When they saw Job from a distance, they scarcely recognized him. Wailing loudly, they tore their robes and threw dust into the air over their heads to show their grief. Then they sat on the ground with him for 7 days and nights. No one said a word to Job, for they saw that his suffering was too great for words. Chapter 3. At last Job spoke, and he cursed the day he was born. He said, "Let the day of my birth be erased, and the night I was conceived. Let that day be turned to darkness. Let it be lost even to God on high. Let no light shine on it. Let the darkness and utter gloom claim that day for its own. Let a black cloud overshadow it. Let the darkness terrify it. Let that night be blotted off the calendar. Never again to be counted among the days of the year, never again to appear among the months. Let that night be childless. Let it have no joy. Let those who are experts at cursing, those whose cursing could rouse Leviathan, curse that day. Let its morning stars remain dark. Let it hope for light, but in vain. May it never see the morning light. Curse that day for failing to shut my mother's womb, for letting me be born to see all this trouble. Why wasn't I born dead? Why didn't I die as I came from the womb? Why was I laid on my mother's lap? Why did she nurse me at her breasts? Had I died at birth, I would now be at peace. I would be asleep and at rest. I would rest with the world's kings and prime ministers, whose great buildings now lie in ruins. I would rest with princes rich in gold, whose palaces were filled with silver. Why wasn't I buried like a stillborn child, like a baby who never lives to see the light? For in death the wicked cause no trouble, and the weary are at rest. Even captives are at ease in death with no guards to curse them. Rich and poor are both there, and the slave is free from his master. Oh, why give light to those in misery and life to those who are bitter? They long for death, and it won't come. They search for death more eagerly than for hidden treasure. They're filled with joy when they finally die and rejoice when they find the grave. Why is life given to those with no future, whose God has surrounded with difficulties? I cannot eat for sighing. My groans pour out like water. What I always feared has happened to me. What I dreaded has come true. I have no peace, no quietness. I have no rest. Only trouble comes. Chapter 4. Then Eliphaz the Temanite replied to Job, "Will you be patient and let me say a word? For who could keep from speaking out? In the past, you have encouraged many people. You have strengthened those who were weak. Your words have supported those who were falling. You encouraged those with shaky knees. But now, when trouble strikes, you lose heart. You are terrified when it touches you. Doesn't your reverence for God give you confidence? Doesn't your life of integrity give you hope? Stop and think. Do the innocent die? When have the upright been destroyed? My experience shows that those who plant trouble and cultivate evil will harvest the same. A breath from God destroys them. They vanish in a blast of his anger. The lion roars and the wildcat snarls, but the teeth of strong lions will be broken. The fierce lion will starve for lack of prey, and the cubs of the lioness will be scattered. This truth was given to me in secret, as though whispered in my ear. It came to me in a disturbing vision at night when people are in a deep sleep. Fear gripped me and my bones trembled. A spirit swept past my face and my hair stood on end. The spirit stopped, but I couldn't see its shape. There was a form before my eyes. In the silence, I heard a voice say, "Can a mortal be innocent before God? Can anyone be pure before the Creator? If God does not trust his own angels and has charged his messengers with foolishness, how much less will he trust people made of clay? They are made of dust, crushed as easily as a moth. They are alive in the morning, but dead by evening, gone forever without a trace. Their tent cords are pulled, and the tent collapses, and they die in ignorance." Chapter 5. Eliphaz, or cry for help, but will anyone answer you? Which of the angels will help you? Surely resentment destroys the fool, and jealousy kills the simple. I have seen that fools may be successful for a moment, but then comes sudden disaster. Their children are abandoned far from help. They are crushed in court with no one to defend them. The hungry devour their harvest, even when it is guarded by brambles. The thirsty pant after their wealth. But evil does not spring from the soil, and trouble does not sprout from the earth. People are born for trouble as readily as sparks fly up from a fire. If I were you, I would go to God and present my case to him. He does great things, too marvelous to understand. He performs countless miracles. He gives rain for the earth and waters the fields. He gives prosperity to the poor and protects those who suffer. He frustrates the plans of schemers so the work of their hands will not succeed. He traps the wise in their own cleverness, so their cunning schemes are thwarted. They find it is dark in the daytime, and they grope at noon as if it were night. He rescues the poor for the cutting words from the cutting words of the strong, and rescues them from the clutches of the powerful. And so at last the poor have hope, and the snapping jaws of the wicked are shut. But consider the joy of those corrected by God. Do not despise the discipline of the Almighty when you sin. For though he wounds, he also bandages. He strikes, but his hands also heal. From 6 disasters, he will rescue you, even in the seventh. He will keep you from evil. He will save you from death in time of famine, from the power of the sword in a time of war. You will be safe from slander and have no fear when destruction comes. You will laugh at destruction and famine. Wild animals will not terrify you. You will be at peace with the stones of the field, and its wild animals will be at peace with you. You will know that your home is safe. When you survey your possessions, nothing will be missing. You will have many children. Your descendants will be as plentiful as grass. You will go to the grave at a ripe old age, like a sheaf of grain harvested at the proper time. You will have studied life and found all this to be true. Listen to my counsel and apply it to yourself. So, this is heavy. This is heavy and presented in a way that can be really thick, and if not properly understood, can give us a weird idea of who God is and how all of this works. So we have Job chapter 1. We have the beginning that presents Job as this blameless and upright man who fears God and shuns evil. He's portrayed as a man of great wealth and status. He possesses numerous flocks and servants and a large family. Now, the the chapter and verses, the headers, those are all added after the fact, right? They're all added for ease of research and looking up specific portions of scripture when the Bible was mass produced. In I tend to not really be a big fan of headers, but we do have some that are actually applicable and actually useful. This is one of them. So we have a prologue, and then it cuts to this heavenly court scene of sorts. The narrative shifts to a heavenly court where God and the Satan, meaning the accuser or adversary, not the modern understanding of a pitchfork, red, horned tailed entity, discusses Job's righteousness. And the Satan challenges God, suggesting that God's piety is only a result of his prosperity and that he would abandon God if he were to suffer. And so God, in a sense, accepts the challenge and allows the adversary to test Job's faith by removing his possessions and striking him with illness. His initial response to the immense suffering that he endures is to maintain his faith and to praise God in the midst of tragedy and heartbreak. And so we shift to chapter 2 where in its context the story continues with illness and death, with tragedy, painful boils over Job's skin, Job's wife urging him to just curse God and die, highlighting the depths of human suffering and the test of Job's faith in the face of adversity. He experiences the loss of his family and his possessions, but remains steadfast in his faith. And so the challenge continues. If you take his health, he will surely turn from you. And so he continues to allow for these things to happen to God, but with the to Job, but with the stipulation that his life must be spared. And so he inflicts inflicts Job with painful boils from head to toe, causing him immense suffering. Now, the significance of this in its context to the original audience explores the themes of suffering and faith in the nature of God, which were central concerns in the ancient world, where people often struggled to understand why good people suffer. The book of Job raises a profound theological question about the nature of God's justice, the problem of suffering, and the limits of human understanding. Those are the key points of consideration at the book of Job, especially at this point. And so we switch where now we hear Job go on after enduring this pain and his friends coming and sitting with him and sitting in the silence. He opens his mouth to curse the day of his birth and the night of his conception, expressing profound despair and lamenting his existence, right? He asks a series of rhetorical questions, wondering why he was allowed to live when he is in constant suffering. The chapter is filled with Job's anguished outburst as he stops silently enduring his suffering and resists God, expressing his deep despair and questioning the justice of his situation. This chapter is written in poetic form, a dramatic poem of speeches attempting to understand God or Job's suffering. This is where Job questions God's wisdom and his plan. Then we get the rebuttal. We get the interjection from Eliphaz, one of Job's friends, who attempts to console Job by suggesting his suffering is a consequence of sin, reflecting on the ancient Near East belief in retributive justice, where good people are rewarded and bad people are punished. See, this is where the book starts to go into commenting on the human understanding of good and evil, right and wrong, prosperity and suffering. And so in Job 4, Eliphaz begins by acknowledging Job's past righteousness and then transitions into suggesting that his current suffering must be a consequence of hidden sin. Now, the ancient Near Eastern worldview that was prevalent during this time and during the time where the initial audience would have been receiving this was one that said that God was a just and fair ruler who punished the wicked and rewarded the righteous. And he claims that he's received a vision that reinforces his view of divine justice and the fragility of humanity in comparison to God's power and wisdom. The book, however, is leading to ultimately challenging the simplistic view of suffering and divine justice, suggesting that suffering can be a mystery and that God's ways are not always easily understood. So, thus far, we have a prologue, a cosmic court scene, Job suffering, Job's response, and then one of his friends' responses. So again, this is hard because it seems like this dude is just suffering for no reason. But again, what is this story teaching us about God? What is this teaching us about the character of God? What is this teaching us about the nature of our relationship with God? When we look at the reality of the human existence, we have to be honest about the fact that this life can get incredibly difficult. And trust me when I tell you, tragedy can strike at a very deep level. And the truth is, we have to reconcile that with an all knowing, all loving creator God. And part of that is understanding that there is hope beyond our understanding, that there is hope beyond measure that sits outside of our specific context and our specific place in history. It sits at this other place that is outside of our understanding and outside of our grasp. And this is a point set within this period of time that fights against that cosmic checks and balances that say good people get and bad people get what they get. That barks back against that that worldview. And so again, we can look at this as an object lesson. We can look at this as a historical account. That isn't what matters here. There's a strong enough argument made for both. But again, we are looking at the continuity of Scripture. We are looking at the continuity of who God is and what we know to be true. So we look at this in the same way that we look at the flood, where this is telling us about the deeper notes of God at a cosmic level. The difference being that we're with the stories that we've had thus far, we've kind of had a specific yes and sort of dynamic. And we're going to find out that in this is not all, like, not every single aspect of what they knew to be true about God and the fact that he is just and that there is justice and righteousness is inherently incorrect. It's about his relationship with humanity and how he treats humanity that we start to see called into question, that needs to be corrected among the people. And so we enter into this part of the story where we start at that scene, we start at the suffering. And then there's like a back and forth that's gonna happen between Job and the people. And we're gonna see that back and forth play out as they try to reconcile what is happening. So again, as we work our way through this, it is important to understand that this is getting at something deeper, and we need to look at the narrative idea behind this and not read ourselves into the book or isolate any part of the book to try and build out a theological stance. All right, that's it. That's all. That's a wrap. Again, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and head over to YouTube. If you're not already, find the video and go ahead, drop a comment. I love to hear from you all. I know that these are big topics, these are big concepts, and they can elicit a lot of different questions. So do not hesitate to reach out. If you are looking for a way to support what we have going on, go ahead and share the show with a friend. Share the video. Go ahead and share the podcast. If you are listening to the podcast, if you'd be so kind as to leave a review, it goes a great deal to help. Until next time, remember, you are prayed for, you are loved deeply. All right, peace.